Hello and welcome to Digging Up Ancient Aliens. This is the podcast where we examine strange claims about alternative history and ancient aliens in popular media. Do their claims hold water to an archaeologist, or are there better explanations out there? We are now on episode 45. I am Fredrik, your guide into the world of pseudo-archaeology. This time we're having a special episode dealing with only one site, actually, the site of Puma Punku.
Fascinating thing about Pumapunku.
A complex located in Tiahuanacu in modern Bolivia. The site is known for its marvelous stones, some shaped like giant letter H's. Of course, the alien proponents claim aliens built these as a landing zone or something. We will look into the claims and figure out what's really going on at this location. A quick little promotion here in the intro. I will speak at Skeptic Camp on the 22nd of September in Manchester, UK. It's part of the QED event this weekend. If you attend, make sure to say hi and listen to the talks. Remember that you find sources, resources, and reading suggestions on our website, diggingupancientaliens.com. You can find contact info there if you notice any mistakes or have any suggestions. If you like the podcast, I would appreciate if you left one of those fancy 5-star reviews that I heard so much about. Now that we have finished our preparation, let's dig into the episode.
Save big money on everything for your projects at Menards. Update your outdoor space with our huge in-stock selection of AC2 pressure-treated lumber, decking, and fencing. Load up big savings using our drive-through lumberyard. Plus, get free estimates fast using our deck and fence design programs. Menards, America's #1 home improvement retailer for customer satisfaction, according to J.D. Power. Visit jdpower.com for details and menards.com for deals.
Save big money at Menards.
So, we are back around Lake Titicaca again. How about we start with the ancient alien description of the site?
These are the mysterious ruins of Puma Punku, nearly 13,000 feet in the Altiplano of Bolivia. What you have here are massive blocks of granite scattered like some kids' toy blocks around the site. It's like some giant cataclysm just wiped out this entire area. Archaeologists are baffled by what Puma Punku was, how it looked, and what the purpose of this enormous structure would have been.
Right, let's start with what Pumapunku is, because there seemed to be some confusion about this among the ancient alien theorists. Pumapunku could maybe better be described as a temple complex. The site is centered around a platform mound with a sunken plaza and monumental buildings on top of it. Around the mound we found ramps and other plazas that seem to belong to this temple complex. Pumapunku is, however, not the only construction in the area. It will be almost like claiming that Notre Dame to be an individual site. There are, of course, infrastructure and other buildings around this complex. Pumapunku is just one location at Tiwanaku, a place, or maybe more accurately, a city, at its peak around 800 CE that inhabited up to 20,000 people. And during this episode, we will show how unbaffled archaeologists are about the site. And the pedant in me also want to clarify something right now. The stone structure we see is not built in granite. I don't understand the ancient astronauts' fetish around granite. I mean, you do you. I don't want to kink shame here. To give Childress some way out of this, at least, Jacob Trudy did write in 1860 that Tiwanaku got their granite slab from Cerro Zacapia. As we will learn, the stone used on the site is called andesite. The always exciting question is, of course, how old is Pumapunku and Tiwanaku? Hugh Newman, author of Earth Grids that we covered in episode Aliens and the Secret Code, claimed the age to be, as follow.
Arthur Poznański was a researcher, part Bolivian, and he had worked at the site for many decades. And he concluded that the site must have been built about 17,000 years ago by studying the archaeoastronomy of that particular site.
Arthur, or Arturo Poznański, is quite a, exciting fellow. He is, however, problematic, but still an interesting person. The last name Poznański is, not from a Bolivian family name. And if you go online, you will note that Arthur is claimed to be Polish, Austrian, German, and Bolivian. So how is it then? Well, if you look at the name, it seems as Arthur's family, to some extent, stem from a Russian Jewish family that seems to have relocated to Poland. The name originates in Poznan, a region in central modern Poland. The area was inhabited by many Germans and Russians during the 1860s. And both of the Germans and Russians would spell their names differently compared to, the Polish people in the area. In Polish, the proper way to construct the name would be Poznański. Germans spell it Posen, and Russian would spell it Poznański. So the difference is in Polish we have a ski in the end, and in Russian we have a sky in the end. In 1861, the emancipation of the serf took place, letting people move more freely. Many well-off people took this opportunity to, leave the area. And during this period, Austria-Hungary was one of the few places where Jews could get full citizenship. So many moved to Vienna, where Arthur was born in 1877. But we should note that Arthur grew up and lived in Germany, where his family owned several factories. They spoke German, he got all his education in German, he always preferred German and Austrian scholars, ID and equipment. However, he went on to spend most of his life in Bolivia, where he got a citizenship as Arturo Poznański. So Arthur was not part Bolivian, but he later did adopt the citizenship, while not necessarily the Bolivian culture. In fact, he referred to the indigenous people as animalistic half-breeds, and Poznański's racism grew as time passed and culminated in his work, What is Race?, where he divided different people into superior and inferior. Germany ranked with Japan, while Russia and China were ranked quite low on Poznański's scale. Based on his Jewish heritage, it is not strange that Arthur strongly criticized Germany's political appropriation of race and argued that Jews and Aryans were not races, and he often came to defend the Jewish community. I think these are two things worth mentioning in this discussion. While Poznański was educated, he had no archaeology, anthropology, or history background. His experience seemed to have been that of a naval engineer and, businessman, something that becomes quite clear in his work. While Poznański did a lot of important work at Tiwanaku, it was mainly by documenting the structures, art and gateways that he made his biggest contribution to the field. However, Arthur's own theories about the site is, crankish is maybe the most proper word to use here. He suggested that Tiwanaku was first located by the coast and later, due to tectonic movement, pushed the area to become part of the Altiplano Plains. And the reason why Arthur wanted Tiwanaku to be by the coast was it would fit the idea of how settlement raising grew during the time. And Poznański did often claim that Tiwanaku was about 12,000 years old. But to Newman's credit, he also mentioned it could be as old as 17,000 BCE. How did Poznański arrive at this date then? Well, this was well before the invention of C14, so Poznański relied on astronomy. Arthur went on to receive funding from Germany to set up an observatory in Bolivia in 1926, and then just went out and tried to, find alignments that he felt was important for the site. And astronomy, it does have a place in our field, but Poznański's methods give a bit of room for improvements there. He just went out and felt, this kind of looked like it, and didn't really account for things being moved around on the site. And I didn't mention that Poznański was problematic. I think you start to see this a little bit already, but let's dig into that wound a bit more, shall we? We get actually a connection to Thor Heyerdahl here, the Norwegian explorer, maybe most famous for his voyage with the Kon-Tiki. Heyerdahl made a voyage to, prove his idea of this white superior race emigrating from South America, possibly from Tiwanaku to Easter Island. And the people from Heyerdahl's Tiwanaku made this journey, according to Heyerdahl, since an inferior race forced them out, basically. And I find it likely that part of this idea stems from Poznański. And Poznański described Tiwanaku's history with two separate races, one inferior and one superior. And these races was based on craniometry, eugenics, and, the physical anthropology idea of the time. The theory culminated in the 1937 work, Anthropology and Sociology of Inter-Andean and Neighboring Races, where he expanded on the scientific races that result in the book What is Race that he published in 1943. The idea received criticisms already then, most notably maybe by Juan Comas, while Heyerdahl don't cite the later two work in his 1952 book, American Indians in the Pacific. It would be strange if these ideas did not influence him. Heyerdahl did rely on much of Poznański's other work, and, their ideas are eerily similar in the end. But if Poznański's date is not accurate, now what is the truth then? And this is often more complicated than what most shows like this portray it. Let us start at the beginning, shall we? When do we begin to see the first settlements around Lake Titicaca? And while people have lived in the area for a very long time, it's important to note that the shift from mobile groups to sedimentary areas were not based solely on agriculture. The shift seemed to have taken place around 2000 BCE, where we also see the introduction of new technologies such as simple architecture, ceramics, and a slow start to the domestication of plants. This period is usually referred to as late Archaic. As I mentioned, the growth of small villages was not due to the introduction of agriculture. The population predominantly relied on fish and foraging. What is interesting here is that the ceramic seemed to not have been the transformal event as it was in Europe. It appears to have been viewed more as another technology to add in the toolbox for them to use. After 2000 BCE, we enter into the early formative period. Here we start to see settlements grow with agriculture and the domestication of animals that seems to primarily fuel this period in comparison to the older period. We start to see gardens and fields being used, and the people around Titicaca started to herd camelids and guinea pigs. We also start to see trade and social rank begin to, start evolving during this era. And the evolution of our ranked society continued during the middle formative period, which lasted roughly between 1300 to 500 BCE. Again, we see evidence of increased agriculture, and probably the area start to use the raised field technology during this time. One of the most known pre-Tiwanaku sites are Chiripa, where we truly see a ranked government take form, and the site is dominated by a large mound with a 20-foot-long sunken plaza in the middle. And in the middle of that court, we find a carved stone. And the residential houses, the upper-class residential houses, contain beautiful decorations such as painted walls, carved niches, and a very interesting yellow brick floor. In the later part of this middle formative period, we find the earliest construction of Tiwanaku. Currently, the often accepted date of the Tiwanaku site is around 800 BCE. However, there is one carbon-14 sample that puts the date much further back in the 1600 BCE. However, from the look of things, this sample taken in 1970 by Carlos Ponce Sangriens might have been contaminated, unfortunately. Then we have Eric Marsh, who suggests we need to move the start date for Tiwanaku into the 1st century CE. Most of the analysis material doesn't predate the late formative period and therefore open up the question of when Tiwanaku was founded. One example Marsh points out is the lack of middle formative pottery in Tiwanaku. But as we see here, it did not appear out of nothing and has a long line of social and technological evolution behind it. So the site of Tiwanaku could have been founded at the earliest around 800 BCE. But how is it for Pumapunku? Well, a carbon-14 date from the site's earliest stage give us a calibrated date of 536 to 600 CE. So this is very well after the date ancient aliens suggest. This date is quite reasonable, and this date is quite reasonable concerning, the other monumental sites at Tiahuanaco. While Pumapunku is the most known location, we have at least 3 more temple complexes, or what we should call it. The Karikala, also known as the subterranean temple, the Kalasasaya, and was often referred to as the twin of Pumapunku, the Akapana. Both Karikala and Kalasasaya are often, at least among the ancient alien proponents, described as being part of Pumapunku. It's a bit wrong to reuse our Paris example from before. It would be to say that the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower are part of Notre Dame. And unfortunately, the Akapana are in worse shape than Pumapunku and is not really getting the same attention as its companion. If it had not been for excavation taking place in the recent years, most visitors would not be able to distinguish this from a natural hillside. While the layout of Pumapunku and the Akapana are slightly different, they have a similar design and intent. Both are platform structure that lead the ritual attendees through stairs, and even with their massive site, they manage to create quite intimate spaces where the ritual can take place. We also see that while Acapana in its prime probably have a more, visual dominance due to its height and its size, Pumapunku seem to have focused more on a ritual dominance with its massive stone gates and blind portals. I also think it's important to stress that the monuments were clearly part of a larger plan and incorporated all 4 of these monuments. Something that's often left out from the pseudo-archaeologists is that Pumapunku was never completed. Tiwanaku went into decline and was abandoned before this massive complex was entirely constructed. After the break, we will look into how Pumapunku was construction and the early stone masonry that they used. So make sure to come back after these few messages.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
College Savings Iowa is now iSave 529, and it can do more than take your child to college. It's their passport to a bright future, because funds can be used for K-12 tuition, trade schools, graduate degrees, books, and everything they need to get anywhere they want to go. Register by September 30th at iowa529contest.com for a chance to win a $5,290 contribution. iSave 529, for every child, for any adventure.
Welcome back. So, now we know a bit more about the site, its history, some of the previous work that's been done, and, all great stuff, and we have a bit more on our feet. So, let's see what the ancient theorists have for us now.
One of the amazing things here at Pumapunku is the precision of the blocks. You can see with this block of granite that it's really been cut at very accurate right angles. Not only do these granite blocks have precision corners, but they also have these difficult drill holes that are going right through the rock.
So, in this clip, we see children walking around with a set square and accidentally showing that the blocks aren't at the right angles. They did not have to put this in the episode. They could have filmed it from a different angle, but they didn't. And I'm very grateful for this. Again, it's not granite, it's andesite and red sandstone. But they do ask a valid question. How were the stone cut and dressed? And Georgios Tsoukalos and Christopher Dunn offer, a bit of a logical fallacy and a horrific experiment here.
You've got vitrification on the laser cut side, and then of course you've got circular tool marks on the side cut with the diamond saw, and then whatever tool they used to cut the ancient surface must have been a different method.
Now, do you think it's possible that some type of a diamond precision tool was used on the old surface, but because it was such a long time ago, that over time the surface became a bit more rough, and we're talking 10 or even 15,000 years ago?
That is a reasonable speculation. I think we have to start examining a little more sophisticated tools that no longer exist.
So these two got a hold of a stone from Pumapunku and then proceed to saw and laser cut it. Yeah, where and how they obtained this artifact and the ethical discussion before destroying it is unknown, but note that they somehow ruled out that any other method than the diamond tip tool must have been what they used, even if it don't really match. They don't even test anything else, giving us a bit of a false dilemma here. I also want to state that looking at the cuts, it's clear that the diamond saw is exceptionally different from the original Pumapunku stone masonry cut side. As we learned previously, the site is only 1500 years old. At the best, not nearly enough time to get the weathering succulus suggest. So let's leave these diamond-tipped precision tools because they're plainly wrong. Could there have been something else used? Are there any tools found? Unfortunately, we have not found any artifacts classified as chisels. The people of Tiahuanaco did have metalwork to some extent. We have found these eye-shaped clamps to hold the stones together at Pumapunku. And at the site of Pumapunku, they seem to have cast the clamps in place. But over at the Acapana, they used copper-nickel arsenic alloy that seemed to have been cold hammered instead. So they clearly had and used metals. So why don't we find metal chisels at Tiwanaku? One answer could be that they, didn't use chisels of metals. We have previously talked about experimental archaeologist Dennis Stock. While mainly dealing with Egyptian archaeology, Stock's idea can, of course, be implemented here too. Stocks did experiments to determine how the Egyptians got those excellent cuts. On granite, diorite, and even harder limestone, copper and bronze tools are quickly damaged. Even modern steel require frequent and severe sharpening. Stocks then started to experiment instead with flint chisels. And with these tools, he got results much closer to the Egyptian work. So from the evidence we have in front of us, when the builders of Tiwanaku started to extract the stone, they seem to have used the hammerstone. And this is based on the pit scars and patterns of thurs, cups and pans that we find on stones still raw at the quarries. And also on the stones dragged to the site that was ready to be quartered into smaller blocks. Jean-Pierre Protzen, who have done a tremendous work on Andean stonework, described this back in 1993. And one hammerstone of hematite with scars of use has been found, unfortunately out of context, but it still gives us an idea on what they could have used. There are also scattered across Tiwanaku quartzite cobbles that could have been, back in the day, part of great hammerstones. Stella Nair and Protzen tried to find out what method could have been used for example, the H block and other intricate carvings that we find at Pumapunku. And armed with the previous research and with Stock's experiments in mind, they tried to find first a suitable material to test their theory on. And the Tiwanaku used the finest andesite stone for the most exquisite work. And andesite usually have around 5.5 to 6 on the Mohs scale. And this measures, the hardness of a rock. The team says that ideally they would have used Tiwanaku stones, but for apparent reasons, they selected a suitable substitute, a royalite stone. As for chisels, they had a couple of options. So they added, according to Nair, flint, agate and jasper, obsidian, greywacke, quartzite and hematite. So first of all, they tried to figure out how you could get this plain surface on the stones that we see at Tiwanaku. And Protzen used, and this is a quote, repeated and systematic use of the straight edge, such that he repeatedly moved the straight edge in concentric circles around several fixed points. he could obtain a flat planar surface while hammering. And while it's possible that Tiwanaku builders used a straight edge, they could also use another tool too. In Egypt, for example, they used a tool called a boning rod, and it was 3 rods on a string, and they used this to get these very flat, nice surfaces. The Greeks, in turn, used something called a surface plate, and they used that to get these really, and I mean extremely close fit on the column drums that they used in their pillars. So again, we have several different ways to achieve a flat surface, but we're not entirely sure what the Tiwanaku constructor used, but not laser, at least. And when they start to cut these intricate shape, Nair realized during the experimentation that depending on whether the form cut was exterior or interior, 2-plane or 3-plane, different tools out of different stone was more suitable depending on what they wanted to achieve. With, this is a quote again, jasper and then finer flint and obsidian blades, Nair was able to work within 0.5 millimeter of the final line. The nice incisions in the internal edges were done with microblades of obsidian and flint, and to get these delicate, smooth look of Tiwanaku masonry, some polishing and cleanup was needed. After the work was done, tool marks were often visible, and these were removed by polishing the stone with obsidian. So the question to what did the builders of Tiwanaku use, well, did have more answers than lasers and diamond tip saw blades. While the tools used have not been thoroughly found yet, this experiment gives us a remarkable insight into how the builders could have done it. It also proves that humans can be more creative when thinking outside the box. I believe it also shows that ancient alien proponents lack a bit of imagination. Since we use power tools today, they must have used them in the past. It's a quite lazy reasoning, to be honest. But could there be something else? Something proving that the Tiwanaku had contact with aliens, or at least with the Sumerians. Well, stay until after these few messages and you will find out.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With AllTrails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with AllTrails.
College Savings Iowa is now iSave 529, and it can do more than take your child to college. It's their passport to a bright future, because funds can be used for K-12 tuition, trade schools, graduate degrees, books, and everything they need to get anywhere they want to go. Register by September 30th at iowa529contest.com for a chance to win a $5,290 contribution. iSave 529, for every child, for any adventure.
Welcome back. So, could there be evidence of contact between Sumer and Tiwanaku? I doubt it, but let's look at the ancient alien claim, as we usually do.
This is perhaps one of the most important archaeological artifacts ever discovered at Tiahuanaco or Pumapunku. This is the famous Fuente Magna bowl discovered near Tiahuanaco. It's a ceramic bowl, and it has written on it Sumerian cuneiform plus Proto-Sumerian hieroglyphic script. This script is coming from circa 3000 BC. It draws a direct connection between the ancient Sumerians and Tiwanaku and Pumapunku.
So the first issue here is, as Childress states, Sumer was a thing around 3000 BCE. We know that Tiwanaku did not exist until the absolute earliest date, 800 BCE. And as we have discovered just a few moments ago, the date is more likely to be around 100 CE. So there's a bit of a distance between these two cultures. And during the 100 CE, the Sumerian cuneiform script was really no longer in use there. The second issue is that the artifact was not found by an archaeologist, and to be honest, we don't really know exactly where or when it was found. In most cases, if you go online, it's often reported that it was discovered in 1950, but you will also encounter dates such as 1958 or 1960, and a couple of other dates in between and after. The discovery is supposed to have been done by a local farmer at the capitalized Shua hacienda. As this would be some sort of acronym, it is not. And this farm is thought to have been owned by a Magna family. Now there is a location called Shua, and there seem to be haciendas at the site, and it's located north of Lake Titicaca. And Keith Fitzpatrick points out that two pseudoscience believers set out to try to find this Magna family, or the owners of the hacienda, or some person connected with this artifact. And by going around showing pictures of the bowl, they encountered a man who recognized it. Now this man is only known as Maximilian, and he is not provided with any last name, and he called the bowl when asked by these, let's call them researchers, El Plato de Juanjo, since he had used it as a feeding tray for pigs before giving it to the museum. And we know at one point or another, the bowl ended up in, the arms of Max Portugal Zamora, who did publish an article about the bowl in 1975 in the magazine Hoy, Supplemento LP67, but the idea that this had Sumerian writing didn't arise until Mario Montaño Aragon published an article in 79 about this. So the origin of the bowl is quite murky. We don't know where or when the bowl was really found. We don't know what it looked like when it was found. And some sites claim the bowl was restored at one point, while some don't. We don't know maybe who found it. There's one man called Maximilian who claimed that he found it, but the interview took place at least 40 years after the fact. So there's a forest of red flags going up here. Now, the origin might be shady, but does it have Sumerian or Sumerian proto-writing on it then? Much of the translations and interest in the bowl seem to originate with Hugh Bernard Fox and Clyde Ahmad Winter, while Fox claimed it to be Phoenician. Winters, who is an Afrocentric scholar, who, for example, claimed that the Olmec came from Africa, declare it to be Sumerian or Proto-Sumerian. And we often encounter Winter's supposed translation online. But Fox and Winter's supposed translation are, at best wrong. And Carl Fagan have done a great job comparing Clyde Winter's suggested translation to, the real Sumerian signs. And he noted that almost all suggested transliteration don't match what the known Sumerian alphabet suggests that they would. And some characters don't even exist, and in those cases, Clyde Winters has just declared them Proto-Sumerian and translated them anyway. Fagan points out that the wedges are pointing in almost all cases in the wrong direction. The signs seem to rotate randomly while keeping its, transliterated meaning, and it seemed to have been written by someone who might have seen Sumerian at one point or another, but when they sat down to create this writing on the bowl, they didn't have the writing in front of them and were working out of pure memory, so to say. So let's see how Clyde Winter suggests that the transliteration of the bow is.
Tirkur, kurkur, kur, nia. Pa en ash, satur, si esh, esh. Papa, yelu ta midu luta, barnu ash, tien.
And Winter suggests translation is...
Approach in the future, one endowed with great protection, the great Nia, the divine one Niash, to establish purity, establish gladness, establish character. Use these talismans to spout, O diviner, the unique advice at the temple, the righteous shrine. Anoint this shrine, anoint this shrine. The leader takes an oath to establish purity, a favorable oracle to establish character. O leader of the cult, open up a unique light for all who wish for a noble life.
And neither the transliteration or the translation make much sense. Well, there is Tiwanaku art on the bowl, but the Sumerian script is, quite nonsensical. And the translation is, more or less the same. It means nothing and has really nothing to do with Sumerian ideas or, writing in general. So what we have is a fake and not a very good one either. And on that shocking news, I will leave you for this time. But I hope to see you next time too. And please say hi if you visit QED on the 22nd to the 24th of September 2023. I will be in appearance. Until then, please spread the word by leaving a positive review on platforms like iTunes, Spotify, or, even better, among your fellow trench dwellers. For more information about me and my podcast, check out diggingupancientaliens.com. You will find an extensive list of sources and resources and reading recommendation for those eager to expand their knowledge on the subject matter on the episode page. You also find me on most social media sites, and if you have comments, corrections, suggestions, or you're hankering to write that email in all caps, you find my contact info on the website. Sandra Martelor created the intro music, and our outro is by the band called Trallskruv, who sings their song Tin Foil Hat or Foliehatt. Links to both of these artists can be found in the show notes. Until next time, keep shoveling that science.
Men jag